I know that you are an avid knitter because you have occasionally put knitting patterns in your books.
Yes, I am. I learned to knit when I was 13, and it was actually my grandpa taught me how to knit because my grandma was too impatient to do things like that. She was like, here, take some yarn and some needles and knit. And so my grandparents, my mom's parents, would sit there watching Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy every evening, and they would knit Afghans, like the same Afghan pattern. And so we all have Afghans, one from grandma, one from grandpa. And so my grandpa taught me how to knit, and then I could only knit that one Afghan pattern. And then as I got older, I started discovering more fun things. And it was actually one of my husband's former roommates, also a guy, who gave me a book of like how to knit in the round, how to make hats, how to do cables. So it was Kyle who taught me how to actually knit fun stuff. And so this is what I'm working on right now. This actual hat with little deer antlers. I'm working on the deer antlers, so the last thing, and then I just need to put them on. There's so many fun, like sort of fantasy patterns that you can do now and stuff. And I was actually just reading an article about how it's there's a really huge market now for like when people see knitwear in movies and stuff, like people that like reverse engineer those patterns, like Doctor Who scarves and like Darcy's knitted hats from Thor and stuff like that. And it's so fun because it's very soothing and therapeutic. It's great for your brain and your fine motor skills. And yeah, that's my thing. I knit.
Nice. But
Ariadne is here.
Hooray!
Ariadne's here.
We were just introducing ourselves.
Okay. So, who was next, or did all three of you go through?
So I'm the only one that's gone.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. All right.
I'll go. My name is Robison Wells. I'm a writer. My vice is I make models and dioramas. I have painted little model soldiers since I was 9 years old. And later in life, I got more interested in the actual making of the terrain the models stand on, and then that turned into trying to be hyper realistic, and that turned into doing complex dioramas, and that is now what I do in my spare time. I've spent today painting a bunch of the British Airborne for something that I'm working on. But it is my getaway. I've got a bevy of mental illnesses. And when I get stressed, both from writing and from work, I will stop what I'm doing for an hour or 2 hours and just paint and create. And I actually have a YouTube channel where I post everything and have fun with that. And it's just a fun little side project, and it keeps me sane.
And you started doing book nooks, which I think are so cool.
Yeah, I got into book nooks. Of course, I love books and I love dioramas, and so I started doing book nooks, and then that kind of took off, and everyone wanted them for Christmas presents, so I did a bunch of commission ones, and did a bunch of book nooks, and I don't have any in the pipeline right now, but that was super fun. And yeah, anytime I can do little miniature model making, I'm happy.
All right, so my name's Beth Buck. I am the director of acquisitions for Immortal Works Press, which is a small independent publisher based here in Utah. I am a little bit ADHD. Well, I mean, not a little bit. I have an actual diagnosis. And so I kind of do everything. So I've knit before. I like to knit the really big, giant lace shawls. If I had thought about it ahead of time, I would have brought some with me to show you guys. I also have 2 spinning wheels. And sometimes I give presentations about the history of the spinning wheel and how that works. I also make lace, tatted lace. And also, this last year, as a way of coping with the pandemic, I took up watercolor. Because why not?
That's awesome.
Why not? That's...
But I do not macrame.
I do not macrame.
Sorry, say that again, Beth?
Oh, I do not macrame.
Ah.
That's not on my list.
Okay, so all 3 of you have introduced yourself?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, I had a little technical glitch again. I'm Ari. I'm the moderator today. I also craft. I do a little bit of everything, from crocheting. Unlike Jessica, I don't really knit. I tried to teach myself how to do hats once, and it did not go well. So I prefer the 1 hook, not the 2 needles. But
Or 3.
or 3. Intimidating.
It's stabby.
Yes.
Yes. I have multiple times looked at knitting needles and gone, that is definitely a weapon.
Yeah, especially if you get the metal ones.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go ahead and
They
start
used to be steel.
Sorry, what was that, Jessica?
They used to be steel.
Yes.
They used to be honest to goodness steel, and that's why I put that in one of my books, that someone is stabbed to death with a knitting needle, as a little favor to my husband, who stepped on one of my metal double point needles once, and it went right through his foot, and he still has the scar, and he's still very bitter about it. And so in the Princess of the Midnight Ball books, I have people using knitting needles as weapons. So.
That's
I
awesome.
think I remember reading about that in one of the Oz books. There's like a contingent of female-only soldiers, and they attack people. And so I remember reading that as a kid and thinking, like, well, that's
needles,
lame.
I think they're in their hair.
Yeah.
They put them out and... Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's 13 Oz books. There's not just the one that they made into a movie. Or 2 movies.
And
if you count.
Some of them are even crazier than you think.
Oh, yes.
I was super into the Ozma story and was just like, so she was a boy, and then one day she just was a girl. And everyone was just like, oh, now she's a girl. That was just so fascinating to me.
Yeah, and
Ozma was disguised as a boy named Pip. She was a boy named Pip, until one day they said, you're actually the queen, your name is Ozma, and she turned into a girl in that moment.
Interesting.
And I had a lot of questions as a child.
Me too.
I can imagine.
Yeah, I remember reading that one. That one's The Marvelous Land of Oz, if I recall correctly.
I think I don't know. The blur.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead and get into some questions for our panel. The first one from our seed questions was, how do you know it's time to rest your creative muse? And how do you recognize that before hitting burnout?
Okay, so one thing that I started doing this year, there's an artist whose work I really love. Her name is Dana Howell, and she's fantastic. But she posted at the beginning of the year on her Instagram that she is doing a thing where she says that her focus is on habits, not goals. And so she has a thing that she calls hobby streak, where what she does is every day she will work on her hobby, her art, for 30 minutes, and then post a picture of it on Instagram. And in whatever condition it's in, how bad it is, how, if it's just splashes of paint, no matter what it looks like, she will post a picture of it on Instagram. And the whole point of it is to develop a habit of doing the work, rather than being so focused on churning out excellent products that impress everybody and impress your friends. And now she's on like hobby day number 740, but I've been doing it since the beginning of the year. So I just hit today. I hit the hobby streak 28. So I've been doing it for 4 weeks, and I have loved it. I get up early in the morning and I work on my hobby as a preemptive way to calm down. I get up before work, and because I work from home because of COVID, and I just sit down at my desk and I paint and I model, and it is a way to, it's almost a meditation. It is a way to center myself and to focus on something that doesn't matter. And that is important to me because everything else in life is so important. And having something that I do that doesn't matter, that no one will care about, and that I post pictures of it on Instagram of how bad it looks, is very empowering to me, because I'm saying this is me at my worst and I don't care, and it is a great way to start the day, because then I can go throughout the day and I can go to work and take whatever criticism I get, and I can take whatever client who is upset with me, and I can do my writing and get bad reviews, and it all washes off my back because I have got this hobby that teaches me that looking bad is fine. And I love it.
I have to say, that's such a wonderful practice. And I think that's what I should be doing with my life. But I'm kind of in a place where, oops, we lost Ariadne. I kind of feel like I'm in a place where I can't really have time to play. And even when I work on my hobbies, it has to be like a product. Like, you can't just knit. You have to knit a pair of mittens for the 3-year-old, because otherwise the 3-year-old won't have mittens. Or you can't paint unless you're painting a picture that will go on your living room wall. But I think that's the whole point of having a hobby and having these creative outlets, is so that it can be time for play. And I think I really like what you said, Robison. Focus on something that doesn't matter. I mean, that advice.
And not to cut you off because I want to hear more what you have to say, but like one thing that I do, because I have this YouTube channel, I post finished products on the YouTube channel because I'm really proud of them. But most of the weeks where I post on the YouTube channel, it is me doing something poorly on film, and then talking about, it's almost blogging. I mean, it's vlogging, I guess. It is talking about the creative process and whatever. And so the video that I posted last week was, I literally electrocuted myself while I was working with a static grass applicator. And so I have it. It's on video. You can watch it. It's fantastic. But having that freedom to say, this is me screwing up, and not only am I posting it on Instagram, but 3 weeks out of 4 on YouTube, you're going to get a video of me doing something stupid.
You're giving yourself time to make, and a place to make mistakes, which I think is really important to not getting burned with the other stuff. because you can make mistakes on a little, on a model. I can make mistakes in knitting, and hopefully I'm not going to get terrible reviews or something. So I feel like it frees me up, like you were saying, like you make the mistakes over here, and then the mistakes that I make in writing, sure, they happen, but I feel like I'm giving myself permission to suck in a place where it doesn't matter, where I'm not being paid to do my best. And I've really tried to fight, well, I haven't really had to fight. It's not like I'm in this great battle, but a lot of people, like a lot of neighbors, and of course they mean well and it's a compliment and stuff, but I actively have someone at church who wants me to have an Etsy shop and sell my knitting. She's an entrepreneur, she has an Etsy shop, she makes jewelry, and it's wonderful, and she's good at it. That is her job. And she is like, I can't understand why you won't let me help you. You've got to do this. This is so good. And I'm just like, because I need something. I would then have deadlines. I would have commissions. I would have to do. I am doing this for fun. These are gifts for people. She saw me. I got some fake fur yarn that when you knit it, it honestly looks like faux fur. You can do collars and things. And I was making like some little fur like, little scarves and stuff for gifts for Christmas last year. And she was just like, you know how much you could charge for those? She was so into it. She was sending me texts and I'm like, please stop. Every single one that I have made is spoken for this year as a gift. And when that is done, it will be after Christmas. And then I have a deadline for a book. This is not my job. There are mistakes in those, which fortunately the faux fur covers up, but there are mistakes. There are mistakes in my knitting, and I just keep calm and carry the one and, move on, keep calm and cast on and stuff like that. And it's fun for me. I don't have to have this little deer antler hat done. I had the yarn. A friend gave me like a fun yarn. I decided to make this hat with it for myself when I walk the dog at night. Nobody is waiting on me to get this done in time. And so I'm not having to push aside my real job of working or my other real job of having 3 kids in order to finish another job for someone. And like that, I think is where you would get burnout, because I've seen people that are just like, oh, I'm also good at this and I'm good at that. And all of them are their job. Like, I'm writing a book and I'm also running a business. And I have a friend who is a writer, but she also like basically owns a couple of businesses and has 3 kids and stuff. And she is just all the time frantic to the point where we're now becoming very concerned about her having some kind of breakdown, because what does she give her time to? Her whole day is regimented hour by hour because she has 2 jobs and is a mom. And I just think I need to I can only handle 1 job and one being a mom, and then the rest is supposed to be playtime.
I really liked what you said about it not being deadlines and not being your job. For the viewers who are not knitters, I think, because I get that a lot too, like, oh, can I buy this thing from you? And I don't think there's really a good conception of how much time it takes to make a finished knitted product.
I have tried to sell stuff, and I could not charge enough. I've made like baby Afghans and tried to maybe sell them at like a quilted bear place. And once you factor in how much a good yarn costs, plus how many hours I spend on that, it's like, who is going to pay $400 for a baby blanket? Because that is the amount of time that it took.
Exactly. And there's some lace shawls that I've made where I've taken like the raw sheep's fleece that's still greasy from the sheep's back, and I've washed it and I've processed the fluff, and I've spun it into yarn, and like really, really thin yarn, and then knitted it up. And people are like, oh, can you make one for me? And I'm like, I'm not letting that go for more than $1,000.
Yeah.
And so nobody wants to pay that much. And so it's just not even worth it. And then sometimes, I've had people try and commission me for something, and they'll see something like on Pinterest, like, could you knit this for me? I'm like, well, no, sorry. It's not worth it.
And it's very real. As Jessica was saying, I do book nooks. And the first book nook that I did was a gift for my dad. And immediately I had people saying, well, will you do this book nook for me? Will you do this book nook for me? And so I started taking commissions, and I loathed it. I did about 7 commissions, and I had deadlines. I had pressure on me to be perfect. And I knew that at some point I was going to have to hand this over to somebody, and they were going to have to say, yes, this was worth my couple $100 that I paid for it. And it made the whole process miserable. I mean, I think that I turned out some pretty good products, but I wasn't enjoying it. And it was just extra pressure on top of everything else.
Yep. I mean, if somebody really wants a Harry Potter scarf these days, you can get them on Amazon. They're under $20 and stuff. But I've made some for my kids because I love them and they don't care how long it takes me, and they won't have outgrown it because it's a scarf by the time I actually get around to it. But and it was for fun, and kind of the same thing happened to me. My oldest child looks like Newt Scamander, like he looks like Newt Scamander. And so when the first Fantastic Beasts movie came out, he wanted to be him for Halloween, and I actually owned a blue trench coat and stuff that fit him, and it was so fun and great. And so I got a screen cap, of the scarf and tried to match the yarns and stuff and made him a scarf, and it's the antique Hufflepuff pattern or whatever they want to call it. But I just sort of did it myself, looking at a picture of it. Every place I took that I was knitting that, because, sitting and waiting, or I think I was at a conference, I think it was maybe at LTUE a couple of years ago or something. Every person was offering me money for it, or could you do one for my kid? And I was like, okay, first of all, I am starting this in June because Halloween is in October for my own child, who, I'm sorry, takes precedence over yours. And will not hate me if this is not exactly the way he dreamed, because I'm his mom and he's not allowed to hate me, I just thought it's my hobby. When it goes from being a hobby to being work, it's not fun anymore. Like you said, Rob, it's not fun anymore. And something's got to be fun, like Mr. Rogers said that play is the work of childhood, but everybody still needs to play, no matter if you're in childhood or not. Like, you've got to have something fun in your life. Don't take away my knitting and make it have a deadline, please. This is the first time in 10 years that I am not under a book deadline right now.
Oh, wow.
And I literally have days where I just walk around in circles in my office feeling frantic because I don't know what to do, because for 10 years I knew every day exactly what I should be writing and how long I had to write it. And so I don't know what to do with myself. So I need to be able to say, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to watch this Medici show on Netflix because the people in it are cute, while I knit for a while at my desk, and I'm going to be okay with that because I don't have a deadline right now.
That's great.
Yeah. You should take up spinning.
What?
You should take up spinning.
I should take up spinning. I am allergic. I am very allergic to lanolin. I'm allergic to pretty much any animal fibers, with the exception of yak. So if I could get some yak, please.
Yes. I know where you could get them. I could hook you up.
How much would that cost? I remember looking into how a really good merino fleece would cost, and I about died.
Yes. So I guess if the viewers are interested, woolery.com can supply all of your fiber art needs. So they sell camel fiber, flax, a lot of synthetic fibers, I want to say that yak is probably like $20 for 4 ounces, but it spins up really, really, really fine. So it would be really nice for something lace.
Okay.
Or something just like.
I just made something with Rowan soft yak, which I think is yak, but also some acrylic. And it's actually braided. It was the nicest yarn I ever worked with. Instead of being a twist that could untwist, it was whatever that's called, where it's basically like a really fine braid.
Ooh.
And it was glorious to work with. But I've just like, there's no way that you could just like roll up and like get a yak to spin. Come on.
Oh, I mean, you can probably find everything on the internet, but
it's all on the internet now.
Yep.
All right. So, what is it specifically about your given hobby that it is that restarts your creativity or keeps it going?
For me, it is it's storytelling, because when I am creating a diorama, it is storytelling. It is I will do a diorama that is usually 2 feet by 2 feet. The most recent one I did was a Battle of the Bulge, the Siege of Bastogne, and it's covered in probably 60 models of individual soldiers, and you are creating in every detail of those soldiers a story of what is this guy doing, what is he aiming at, what is he hiding behind, who is he interacting with, what is he doing. And so for me, all of my hobbying is telling a story, and all of my video making about the hobby is, I mean, very consciously talking about the art of creation. I blog about the art of creation all the time. So it sparks in me the creative juices that I'm not getting from my book, which is hard to write at the moment. But it is flexing some of those same muscles in a totally different way.
I really like what you said about it being storytelling. One of the things that I like best about fiber art, and when I'm sitting down on my spinning wheel, spinning the yarn, I don't necessarily, it's not really telling a story, but that's kind of when it kind of makes me feel grounded, because I know all the stories of the women in my family who also used to spin, like back several generations. And so then when I'm kind of doing that meditative act, then I kind of feel like I am putting myself in this continuing story of my family.
Oh, I was just talking about, like, I think it's fun to make things from, because I'm a huge reader as well, from books and movies and stuff that I love, to make fairy tale stories and stuff. And I made a Doctor Who scarf for Annie, for Rob's service dog. She had
it was awesome.
Doctor Who scarf.
Oh, fun.
Mm-hmm.
It was fantastic.
Figured out how to make a scarf. It could hook through her collar, so it didn't just like come off like it.
Oh, perfect.
It threaded her collar through.
Yeah,
it was terrific.
Will just take them right off themselves. At least mine do.
Yep.
Okay. So Jessica already mentioned that her knitting needles ended up in one of her books as a weapon. Has any of your guys' hobbies influenced your work in ways other than rest and recharge?
Oh, absolutely. So I'm going to give like a little plug for my personal project. So even though I'm primarily my experience with publishing is as an acquisitions editor, so I see other people's work, but I'm also I'm working on my own novel, and hopefully someday it will get published, maybe. But it is about this girl who learns magic spinning and knitting. Like, that's part of the magic system in the world. And it is so fun to write because one of my big pet peeves is a lot of my pet peeves is when people are trying to retell Sleeping Beauty or Rumpelstiltskin, and so they have like a spinning wheel in the story, but they don't actually know how a spinning wheel works. Right? Yeah, it's like, oh, it's for weaving. Like, no, it's not for weaving. It's just, no. And so it's really, I'm all like excited about it. So it's fun to write about something that you're passionate about, that you're knowledgeable about, but making it magic. So.
That's cool.
The closest thing for me is that I wrote a short story. Jessica, were you in the anthology about the pandemic that was at BYU?
Yes.
So for the pandemic, there was this anthology at BYU that was short stories about the pandemic, and it is currently on display in the Lee Library. But the story that I wrote was a semi-autobiographical story. It was about, and I'll spoil it for you because it's 1,000 words and you're whatever. But the story is about a guy who gets laid off from his job, who has mental illness issues, which I have, who retreats to this small town, and he works in the small town after he's laid off from his job. He stops taking his medicine. He's hearing things, but he's just obsessed with cleaning up this small town and making it the best it can be. The twist of the story is that he has retreated to the basement of his house and is working on a model train set, and it has completely lost touch with reality, and and has immersed himself to the point where he is 100% living in the train set. And so that is probably the most direct use of my model making that I've used in my stories. So
that is so cool.
That sounds fantastic. Mine was bread starters. Mine was like, where do all these bread starters come from? Like, all of a sudden, all these people are just like, and who is doing it? Because like we had like Amish friendship bread starters show up on our porch like a week into lockdown. It's like, where did this? So I have like all the bread starters are sentient bread. That's awesome. So speaking of hobbies, I do make my own bread and stuff like that, and I love to cook. So yeah, I've put my first editor used to call my books saving the world through household. What did she saving the world through like household skills or something like that? Because like in Dragon Slippers, she was a seamstress, which I'm not. I mean, I can sew, but like in Dragon Slippers, she's a seamstress, like beautiful ball gowns and embroidery. But they also had to make collars for these dragons that were basically based on, I used to be so keen with the friendship bracelets back in the day. In junior high, I used to pin the threads, to the knee of my jeans. And during class, I could make a friendship bracelet in the science class. And that's why I never got an A in science class. But I made a lot of great friendship bracelets. So basically, she's making giant friendship bracelets, like doing this sort of like knot weaving, like type of thing. I made it sound cooler than friendship bracelets because there were dragons. So that was in the first one. My second book was based on the fairy tale East of the Sun, West of the Moon, where she has to prove herself by washing a stain out of a shirt. And which is something trolls can't do, because trolls can't make anything clean. They can only make things dirtier. And so only the true human maiden can do laundry correctly. and then my next series was was the midnight ball, which everybody's knitting all the time, and I included knitting patterns that I had created and stuff like that in it. So like my first few books were all about your crafts and how they save the world.
That's awesome. All right, so
we've got a lot of flack about the weaving, though, the knotted collars, and I have had to write so many emails back and go, have you never made a friendship bracelet? Like, really hardcore weavers will be like, you've got to have tension on both ends, and I'm like, no, you just need a safety pin and some string. You'll be fine.
All right, so we've got just a few minutes left, so let's go ahead and see if any of our viewers have, or audience members, have any questions.
Viewers like you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your support.
All right. Our first question tonight comes from Chanel. Any tips about how to know when those hobbies are helpful and when they are more like procrastination?
Excellent question.
Okay, so a big thing with me is that my hobby can get so expensive. And I think that that's probably true of everybody's. But like I said, I've got mental illness, and one of my mental illnesses is OCD. And I get into ruts where there was a period over about 3 months during the summer where I blew $2,000 on stuff, and it was not good. We could not afford it, but I was just on Amazon every day. I'm like, I need that, I need that, I need that. I have since talked to my psychiatrist. I have since established a separate bank account that I use for managing money that I'm only allowed to use for hobbying, and I'm not allowed to use the other bank account for anything else. But yes, there is a very big line in my life where I have to moderate what I do, or else it will be bad for the family in serious ways. And I moderate that through communication with my wife, through total transparency. One thing we do every single day at night is I tell her what I bought that day. Even if it's like, I got gas at the gas station, I went to the grocery store, I picked up bread and milk. I tell my wife every single day, this is what I bought. And it is because of the fact that if I don't do that, I will slip into, well, yesterday I spent $40 on grass. And so, yeah.
I also tell my husband every time I spend money, but that is largely because the concept of human money is completely alien to me, and I do not understand why we must move the little bits of paper around. They don't seem unhappy where they are. So we had to establish that years ago. I think when you start realizing that you're getting behind on work you have to do, like, you know, if you have a deadline for your writing or something, and you're like, okay, you need to be organized basically, and say, okay, I've got to finish this 1,000-page pandemic story by next week. So that means I need to write about, let's say, if we write 200 words a day. And if you go like, oh, well, I was knitting and watching TV instead, so I guess I have to write 400 words tomorrow. And then, oh, whoops, I guess on Thursday I'll be writing 600 words. Then you've got a problem, and it is time to put down the crafting supplies. And you are blowing past the things that you need to do. And I think it's the same of anything. Or if you are ignoring, family members, if you're ignoring children and stuff like that, and no one has fed the dog and things, and it's like, not because you were working at something, I'm sorry, I had a deadline, I had to pull an all-nighter, to finish this story, but like, oh, sorry, I was staring into space and knitting, like, then that is a problem. that's when you need to pull back. And I like that you said, Rob, like total transparency. I think that's very important in everything, and with whoever you're with. Like, is it your parents, your spouse, your cat, whatever? Like, you need to talk to them about what you're doing, especially if you're starting to have trouble, especially if you're starting to like become obsessed with something or something like that. You need to talk to the people in your life and let them know what's going on so that they can help you.
Well, for me, it's a little bit different. It looks a little bit different because I kind of reward myself with getting out my craft supplies. And so if I have a lot to do, I'll be like, no, you're not allowed to get out your spinning wheel, or you're not allowed to, to paint that picture you really want to. And I'm like, okay, fine. So I'll just be on Twitter for an hour, and which is which is not better.
No.
Okay, I think I just heard the wrap up. So let's take a minute.
5 minutes.
Yeah, it was
5 minutes.
Yeah, so we could probably take another question.
Okay, yeah, let's go ahead and take one more.
All right. Our second question is from Crow Darkness. How many other artistic hobbies have you guys tried but didn't continue them, and what were they?
Didn't continue them?
I have some terrible, terrible pottery around this house. Like, one is full of change from foreign countries and it's supposed to be a teapot, but my kids didn't believe me. And one of them is holding all of our keys, and I told my husband what it was supposed to be one time, and he laughed for a day. So
I started life as an oil painter. I started taking oil painting classes when I was 11 years old, and that led into other artistic pursuits. Particularly, I started working at a theater, and I learned stagecraft and set building. And the plan was that I was going to apprentice to the artistic director at the theater for 5 years, and then when he retired, then I would take his job and become the artistic director at a theater. And so I have 3 years of stage building apprenticeship under my belt. And then he suddenly died of cancer, and they had to hire a new artistic director, and I wasn't ready for the job yet. And so that all shot that out the window, and I went on to other things in life. But set building is still a huge part of my life. I built a float in the parade from scratch by myself because no one else wanted to work on it. And that used all of the stagecraft abilities. But that is where I learned to carve and sculpt and build stuff, and then I've just transferred that down into the micro scale.
You've been a draftsman, haven't you? You draw. I mean, you draw very technical.
Oh, yeah.
He does beautiful
I also
stuff like that looks like an architectural like.
Yeah, when I was at the same time I was working in the theater, I worked drawing houses for real estate magazines because that was back before they had 3D computer pictures that they would put, and this was the real estate magazines, and they would have their drawings of houses, and I would draw the houses, and that sustained me through high school, and so I've gone on and done several of those, and then went down the commission road of that, and hated the commission road of that, and abandoned it, and that's a trap that I fall into everywhere is, oh yeah, I drew that. That's the cover of a book.
That's really cool.
I like it.
But it's a trap that I fall into
nice.
with everything, is that I try to monetize it. I get a hobby and I think, how can I make money at this hobby? And then I do it and I hate it and it falls down. And so I'm trying desperately not to do that with this, although there is no market for dioramas. So I don't think that I'm going to run into problems with monetizing dioramas.
You can sell anything on Etsy, man. You can sell like badly taxidermied rats. It doesn't matter.
So I mean, I went through a phase where I tried to take up the guitar once, and that lasted about 6 months. But like I've also tried bookbinding, but I didn't give that up. I still do that. It's really fun. Yes.
That's cool.
That sounds really fun.
Oh yes.
Honestly, I've given up more hobbies, like started and given up more than I've kept. But I'll try just about anything. I've tried leatherworking, painting, sewing, which I'll still go back to every once in a while, but I kind of suck at it. So, all right, we've got about 1 minute left. So do you guys want to say where you're going to be tomorrow, or how to get a hold of you, where to find you, where to find your books?
The only thing I'm doing tomorrow is I have a chat with the artist, tomorrow at 3. But I think there's a cap on that, so I'm not sure if it's hit the cap yet or not. But anyway, that's all I've got. But if you want to get a hold of me, I'm just Jessica Day George on my website, and I do actually do a newsletter now that is called Jessica Recommends. That is just every month, like books that I recommend, because I like big books and I cannot lie. So.
You can find me at my website, robisonwells.com. If you are interested in all of the weird models that I make, my YouTube channel is Robison Wells Hobby Terrain. And there are videos going back there about 6 months. And you can watch the one last week where I electrocuted myself. And
I've got to see it.
That's pretty great. But tomorrow I'm going to be on one panel at 5:00 about disabilities in fiction, disability literacy. I think it's at 5:00. And that's me.
So you can query me if you have a manuscript that you want me to look at and you're interested in for publishing with Immortal Works. That's immortalworks.press/submissions. And I have 2 panels tomorrow. I have one at 11, which I think that's the one on the future of science fiction. And then I have another one at 7 p.m. And I can't remember which one that is. I think I'm moderating it, so I should probably make sure that I know what it is.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh.
Thanks so much, guys. Oh, sorry, Beth.
Oh, I just remembered. It's art therapy. Yeah. So.
Oh.
Yeah. So it'll be really fun. Yeah. Like this, but more so.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us.